There's a version of you that exists only in the presence of other people. The one who laughs at jokes that aren't funny, who softens opinions mid-sentence when you sense disagreement, who performs enthusiasm you don't feel, agreement you don't believe, interest you don't have. You've become so skilled at this that you don't even notice it anymore. The adjustment is automatic, instant, a constant background calculation running beneath every interaction. What do they need me to be right now? And here's the part that keeps you trapped. You think this is who you are. You've been performing for approval for so long that you've forgotten there's a version of you that exists independent of other people's reactions. Nietzsche spent his entire life studying people who gave their power away like this, who lived entirely through the eyes of others, who couldn't make a single decision without first calculating how it would be received. And he discovered something most people never learn. The moment you stop needing to be liked is the moment you become impossible to control. Today, we're going to talk about how approval became your currency, what it's costing you, and what becomes possible when you finally stop trading your truth for other people's comfort. Let's start with how this became automatic. You didn't consciously decide that other people's opinions mattered more than your own integrity. This pattern was built for you. And it started the moment you realized that being liked meant being safe. When you were young, acceptance wasn't optional, it was survival. You needed your caregivers to approve of you, to value you, to keep you connected. And if that approval was inconsistent, if it had to be earned, if it could be withdrawn when you misbehaved or expressed the wrong thing, you learned to read the room, to adjust, to become whatever kept you connected. Psychologist John Bowlby's attachment research shows exactly how this works. Children who experience conditional love, love that arrives when they're good and disappears when they're not, develop what he called anxious attachment. They become extraordinarily attuned to other people's emotional states, hypervigilant to signs of disapproval, and willing to abandon their own needs to maintain connection. That strategy worked. It kept you attached to the people you needed. It earned you approval, acceptance, safety. But the skill that kept you safe in childhood becomes the cage that traps you in adulthood. Because now you're not a child managing caregivers. You're an adult with your own values, your own truth, your own life to build. And you're still performing, still adjusting, still abandoning yourself every time approval is on the line. The pattern didn't break when you grew up. It just became invisible. Let's be honest about what this pattern is taking from you. You're exhausted, constantly reading micro-expressions, adjusting your tone based on how it's being received, monitoring whether you're coming across the right way. That level of performance is draining in a way most people don't understand. You're not just having conversations. You're managing how you're perceived in every single one. You've lost access to your actual opinions. When you've spent years shaping your beliefs around what will be accepted, you stop knowing what you actually think. Your preferences become a reflection of what's safe to prefer. Your values become whatever keeps the peace. And the real you, the one with thoughts that might upset people, disappears completely. When you show up as what people want to see, you don't get relationships with people who love you. You get relationships with people who love the version you're performing. And those people will never know the real you because you've been too busy hiding it to keep them comfortable. When you perform for approval, you make yourself easy to influence. When your sense of worth is tied to being liked, anyone who threatens to withdraw their approval has immediate power over you. They don't need to argue with you. They just need to signal disapproval. And you'll adjust. You'll soften. You'll abandon your position to avoid the discomfort of not being liked. You're not living your life. You're living the focus-grouped version of yourself, and that performance is costing you everything you actually are. Nietzsche observed this pattern everywhere he looked. People losing themselves in the collective, defining themselves entirely through others' eyes, letting other people decide what's good, what's true, what's acceptable, handing over their power in exchange for belonging. And he contrasted it with what he called the will to power. Not power over others, but power over yourself. The ability to define your own values. To stand alone when standing alone is what truth requires. To be the author of your own life rather than a character in someone else's story. Nietzsche believed that most people never access this. They spend their entire lives seeking approval, avoiding rejection, optimizing for acceptance, safe, liked, approved of, and completely powerless. Because when you need to be liked, you can be shaped, you can be bent, you can be made to compromise everything you believe, not through force, but through the simple threat of disapproval. But the moment you stop needing their approval, the moment you're willing to be disliked, misunderstood, rejected by people who are never going to accept the real you anyway, nobody can control you anymore. Because the only leverage they had was your fear of losing their approval. And you just removed that leverage entirely. Let's be clear about what this shift actually looks like. Stopping caring about being liked doesn't mean becoming cold, cruel, or deliberately antagonistic. It doesn't mean rejecting all feedback. It doesn't mean being rude just to prove you don't need approval. It means this: you stop betraying yourself to manage other people's comfort. You stop softening your truth to make it more digestible. You stop pretending to agree when you don't. You stop performing a version of yourself designed to minimize friction. You become honest, direct, clear about who you are and what you stand for, and you let people respond to that however they're going to respond. Some people will appreciate it, some people won't, and both outcomes become equally acceptable, because your worth is no longer determined by their reaction. This isn't cruelty, it's integrity. You're not rejecting connection. You're rejecting the exhausting performance that pretends to be connection. You're done with relationships where you have to hide, shrink, or lie about who you are to keep them intact. And here's what Nietzsche understood. The people who matter don't need the performance. They want the real version. The one that sometimes disagrees, sometimes challenges, sometimes refuses to go along with what everyone else is doing. Those people don't want you to be universally liked. They want you to be real. So what actually shifts when you stop optimizing for approval? You become selective about who gets your energy. You stop trying to be everything to everyone. You stop contorting yourself to fit into every social situation. You become comfortable with the fact that you're not for everyone. And that's fine, because the people you are for will find you, and those connections will be real. You reclaim enormous amounts of energy, the energy you were spending on constant self-monitoring, constant adjustment, constant performance. All of that comes back to you. And you realize how exhausting it was to live that way, how much of yourself you were giving away just to avoid disapproval. When you stop caring about being liked, you make better decisions. When you're not optimizing for other people's comfort, you can actually think clearly. You can ask, what do I actually want? What aligns with my values? What's right for my life? Not what will make other people happy, but what's actually right for me. You become significantly harder to manipulate. When someone tries to control you through the threat of disapproval, when they signal that if you don't comply, they'll withdraw their acceptance, it stops working. Because you're no longer afraid of their disapproval. You've already accepted that not everyone will like you, and you've discovered you can live with that. You also attract different people. The ones who valued the performance will leave, and that's painful. But the ones who stay, and the new ones who arrive, are people who can handle the real you, who value honesty over agreeability, who want depth over performance, and those are the only relationships worth having. Here's what Nietzsche knew, and what Carl Jung later articulated in his work, The Persona. You've been living as a constructed self, a version of you designed to be acceptable, likable, safe, and that constructed self has been suffocating who you actually are. Jung called this the persona, the mask you wear for the social world. And he believed that one of the most important tasks of becoming a fully realized person is learning to distinguish between the mask and the authentic self underneath. To stop identifying with the performance and start living from what's real. But here's the hard part. Letting the performance die feels like dying yourself. Because you've identified with it for so long, you've built your entire social life around it. People know you as this version. They expect this version. They like this version. And when you stop performing it, when you start showing up as you actually are, some of those people are going to be confused, disappointed, upset. They'll say you've changed, that you're not yourself anymore. And they're absolutely right. You're not the self they wanted you to be. You're the self you actually are. And that distinction is everything. Nietzsche would say this is what it means to become who you are. Not who your parents wanted, not who your friends expected, not who society insisted you should be. And that requires letting everyone else's version of you die. So how do you actually do this? How do you stop optimizing for approval when it's been your operating system for decades? Start by noticing when you adjust yourself. Pay attention to the moments when you change your opinion mid-sentence, when you soften your voice, when you laugh at something that isn't funny, when you agree with something you don't believe. Just notice it. You can't change what you're not aware of. You don't have to blow up your entire life overnight. Start small. Disagree with something minor. Express a preference you usually hide. Say no to something you'd normally say yes to just to keep the peace. Build the muscle slowly. Let someone be disappointed in you. This is the hardest one, but you need the experience of someone being upset with your choice and discovering that you survive it, that their disappointment doesn't destroy you, that you can live without their approval. This is how you learn that disapproval is survivable. Stop explaining yourself. When you make a choice that doesn't align with what people expect, you don't owe them a lengthy justification. You don't need to convince them it's right. You just need to own it. Find people who value authenticity over agreeability. You can't do this alone. You need at least a few people in your life who appreciate honesty over performance, who would rather you disagree with them than lie to keep things comfortable. Find those people. They exist. Accept that some people will leave. Some people were only comfortable with you because you had no boundaries, no strong opinions, no resistance. When you stop performing, they'll leave. Let them. Those were never your people. Your people are the ones who stay when the mask comes off. Here's what I want you to understand. The need to be liked isn't a character flaw. It's an adaptation. It served you once. It kept you safe when safety meant being accepted by people who had power over you. But you're not that child anymore. And the cost of carrying that adaptation into adulthood is your entire life. Every time you abandon yourself to avoid disapproval, you reinforce the belief that your worth is conditional, that you're only valuable when you're liked, that the real you, the one with boundaries, opinions, preferences that might make people uncomfortable, is something to be hidden. Nietzsche spent his life arguing against this. He believed that the highest human achievement was becoming who you actually are, not who you were trained to be, not who the crowd wants you to be, but who you are when you stop performing. And he knew that most people would never do it, because it requires risking the one thing most people aren't willing to risk, being disliked. But here's what's on the other side of that risk: freedom. Real freedom. The freedom to be who you actually are without apology, without performance, without the constant exhaustion of managing how you're perceived. The freedom to say what you think, to pursue what you want, to walk away from relationships that require you to be smaller than you are, to live a life that's actually yours. And power. Not power over other people, but power over yourself. The ability to make decisions based on your values rather than other people's comfort. The ability to stand alone when standing alone is what integrity requires. The moment you stop needing to be liked is the moment you take your life back, not from any specific person, but from the need itself, from the belief that your worth is determined by other people's approval. You're not required to be universally liked. You're required to be true to yourself. And the moment you choose truth over likability, the moment you decide that being real is more important than being approved of, nobody can control you anymore.